Sagnik, a young artist with restless ambition, was desperate to find a subject that would set his final year project apart. His sketchbooks brimmed with talent, but nothing he had drawn so far felt unique. Frustrated, he turned to one of his seniors for inspiration. With a knowing smile, she whispered about a place few dared to visit. Mayanagar, a village spoken of for its haunting beauty, where nature seemed too perfect, too quiet, as if it were hiding something beneath its charm. The very next morning, Sagnik packed his brushes, canvases, and sketchbooks with a heart full of anticipation. At exactly 7, he boarded the train bound for Mayanagar. The journey stretched on for nearly 3 hours, each passing landscape shifting from crowded towns to endless stretches of green. When the train finally slowed to a halt at Mayanagar station, Sagnik stepped out into air that felt sharper, cleaner, almost unreal. The village was indeed beautiful, draped in mist and silence, as though nature itself had paused to watch him arrive. The village seemed oddly deserted. Only a handful of people moved about, most of them tribal folk with quiet, watchful eyes that lingered a little too long on strangers. Sagnik, eager to settle in, waved down a rickshaw and asked if there was any place he could stay for the night. The rickshaw puller's face stretched into a wide grin, too wide, revealing a row of uneven teeth that made Sagnik's stomach tighten. "I know a very good place," the man said, his words dragging as if he enjoyed the weight of them. As the rickshaw rattled through the narrow paths, the landscape unfolded in unsettling beauty. Towering trees bent toward the road as though eavesdropping, and fields of tall grass swayed in perfect rhythm despite the still air. The silence of Mayanagar pressed close, beautiful yet heavy, carrying with it a strange sense that the village itself was waiting for something. Once he had settled his belongings, hunger gnawed at Sagnik. He stepped out into the hushed lanes, searching for food, and soon came across a tea stall, if it could be called that. The place was dim and crumbling, its wooden beams sagging as though ready to collapse. A single lantern flickered inside despite the daylight, casting long, uneasy shadows across the walls. The stall owner stood behind the counter, his skin unnaturally pale, as if all color had been drained from his face. When Sagnik asked what was available, the man didn't speak. Instead, he raised a trembling hand and pointed to a few items laid out on the counter. Weak tea, a plate of stale biscuits, and a couple of burnt bread toasts. The sight and the silence made Sagnik uncomfortable. Still, he ate quickly, aware of the owner's sunken eyes never leaving him. It was already past noon when Sagnik finished and rose to pay, on impulse. He asked about the southern part of Mayanagar, a place he had heard described as the most beautiful in the village. At once, the stall owner's face grew even paler, as though the question had stolen what little blood remained in his cheeks. He hesitated, his lips twitching as if he wanted to speak but couldn't, or wouldn't. Finally, without a word, he lifted a bony finger and pointed toward a narrow path that slipped between two towering trees. Sagnik tightened the strap of his bag and began to walk toward the narrow path. The farther he went, the quieter everything became. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. Soon, the path opened into a clearing, and in the center stood a sprawling banyan tree, its roots clawing into the earth like skeletal fingers. Something about the tree tugged at Sagnik's artist's eye. He set up his easel and brushes, already imagining how the twisted roots and swaying branches could capture the essence of Mayanagar's strange beauty. But then he heard it. Soft jingle of anklets echoed through the still air. Sagnik froze, brush hovering over canvas. From behind the tree, a woman appeared, gliding as though the earth itself bent beneath her steps. She was draped in a deep crimson sari, her eyes large and luminous, her features too perfect, as though carved from divine hands. The scent of night-blooming jasmine flooded the air, thick, intoxicating, dizzying. She sat gracefully beneath the banyan tree, humming a tune so haunting it stirred something restless in his chest. At once, Sagnik knew this was it, his subject, his masterpiece. He approached her cautiously. I'm an artist. Could I paint you? She didn't speak. She simply turned her head and gave the faintest nod, her eyes unreadable. When he asked where she lived, she raised a slender finger and pointed vaguely toward a cluster of huts in the distance. Sagnik wasted no time. He began sketching furiously, capturing the curve of her cheek, the depth of her gaze, the way the light seemed to bend around her. Hours passed unnoticed as the sun slipped behind the hills. The forest darkened, and then he noticed her hands. Her nails, once delicate, now stretched long and yellow, curling like claws. The veins on her skin bulged dark, spreading like cracks on porcelain. Her face, once breathtaking, sagged and shriveled, the eyes sinking deep, the mouth widening into a toothless grin. Before he could move, one of her arms stretched, unnaturally long, reaching toward him with spindly fingers. Sagnik's heart slammed against his ribs. He dropped his brush and ran, the sound of her anklets now clanging wildly behind him. The smell of flowers growing suffocating, chasing him with every breath. He stumbled into the village, desperate, until he spotted a small hut glowing faintly with firelight. Inside, an elderly couple sat cross-legged on the floor, their dinner spread before them. "Please, help me," Sagnik gasped, collapsing at the doorway. The couple exchanged a glance, beckoned him in. Their voices were soft, almost too soft, as they urged him to wash up outside before joining them. Grateful yet trembling, he splashed water on his face at the hut's outer sink. But as he made his way back, the scent hit him again. The same intoxicating flowers. A low hum floated on the air, familiar, haunting. Sagnik's blood ran cold. He stepped inside. The couple was still seated, but their heads had twisted at an unnatural angle, turned fully away from him. Their shoulders quivered as they laughed, high, broken, inhuman laughter. And behind them, stretching across the wall, a massive shadow swelled, the outline of a woman with taloned fingers and hair that writhed like serpents. Sagnik's legs refused to move, his knees locked as the shadow loomed larger, closer. The last thing he saw before his vision went black was a pair of withered, clawed hands closing around his throat. The following week, the art college buzzed with whispers. It was submission day for final projects, but Sagnik's seat was empty. His friends hadn't heard from him since he left for Mayanagar. Yet when the panel opened his folder, a chill spread through the room. Inside was a single painting, masterfully detailed. A young woman sat serenely beneath a sprawling banyan tree, draped in a crimson sari, her eyes deep, her smile timeless. New nightmares every week. Subscribe, like, and share before she finds you.